Join our family of creators. Your support means the world to us. Subscribe now to the Content Creator channel. Your support keeps us motivated and helps us bring you fresh, exciting content every week. Hit that subscribe button and be part of our journey. On April 2, 2025, President Donald Trump stood in the White House Rose Garden and declared Liberation Day, a sweeping break from decades of U.S. trade policy. He called it a declaration of economic independence, vowing to protect American industries and put U.S. workers first. Trump argued that unfair foreign trade practices had hurt the country for too long. The new policy, a bold promise to rebalance global commerce and reclaim American manufacturing. The message was clear. The old rules of global trade were over. Liberation Day was framed as a historic turning point, not a minor adjustment. The administration's strategy: make foreign goods more expensive, encourage buying American, and accept short-term pain for long-term gain. This was a direct challenge to the globalized system that had shaped the world economy for decades. For supporters, it was a long-awaited fulfillment of campaign promises. For critics, it was a risky move that could destabilize the global economy. Liberation Day signaled the U.S. was ready to use its economic power aggressively. The world was put on notice. American trade policy had changed, dramatically. The heart of Liberation Day was Executive Order 14,257, which imposed a new 10% tariff on nearly all imports, effective in just 3 days. This blanket tariff applied to almost every country, with key exceptions: Canada and Mexico, preserving the USMCA trade bloc. The administration aimed to target what it saw as unfair trade relationships, not all trade. The order also authorized higher, country-specific reciprocal tariffs against about 60 nations accused of unfair practices. These retaliatory tariffs, set to begin April 9th, would match or exceed barriers those countries imposed on U.S. goods. The message: change your trade practices or pay the price. This marked a shift from negotiated agreements to unilateral action, using executive power to reshape trade. The U.S. would no longer wait for international bodies or drawn-out talks. The world now faced a new, more confrontational American trade stance. Allies and rivals alike had to decide how to respond. The stage was set for global economic conflict. The market's response to Liberation Day was swift and severe. The S&P 500 plunged 8%, the sharpest drop since the early pandemic, amid fears of a global trade war and recession. Bond yields swung wildly as investors braced for inflation or economic slowdown. Business leaders, including Elon Musk, warned the tariffs could trigger a recession. For consumers, the impact was immediate. Prices on everyday goods rose, especially in industries reliant on imports. The auto sector was hit first. New car prices jumped 2.5% in April alone. Confidence in the economy began to waver as families felt the pinch. Yet the U.S. trade deficit narrowed sharply, falling 55% in April as imports plunged. The administration touted this as proof the policy was working. Critics countered that shrinking trade was a sign of economic distress, not strength. The tariffs' effects rippled through every sector, fueling uncertainty. The country was now living with the real-world consequences of a radical trade shift. The debate over costs versus benefits had only just begun. The aggressive tariff plan began to unravel almost immediately. 13 hours after imposing country-specific tariffs, President Trump paused most of them for 90 days to allow negotiations. The 10% baseline tariff stayed, but China faced the harshest measures, with some tariffs soaring to 125%. China retaliated, escalating the trade war. But economic realities forced both sides to back down. Key Chinese tech imports were exempted, and a Geneva deal led to a mutual 90-day tariff reduction. U.S. tariffs on many Chinese goods dropped to 30%, still high but less extreme. The truce was fragile. The underlying dispute remained unresolved. At home, major U.S. companies and industry groups lobbied fiercely against the tariffs, warning of supply chain chaos and higher consumer costs. Lawmakers from both parties joined the outcry, highlighting deep divisions over protectionism. The administration's strategy was now under intense domestic and international pressure. The rapid policy shifts revealed the complexity of disentangling global trade. The trade war's next moves were uncertain. The world watched for the next escalation or retreat. The trade war soon moved from markets to the courts. Business groups sued, arguing the president had overstepped his authority by imposing sweeping tariffs under emergency powers. On May 28, the U.S. Court of International Trade ruled against the administration, blocking the 10% blanket tariff. The court said only Congress can regulate foreign commerce and levy tariffs this broadly. Targeted tariffs on specific sectors remained, but the universal tariff was halted. The administration appealed, and a higher court temporarily allowed the tariffs to stay, while the case proceeded. The legal fight was far from over. The outcome could redefine the balance of power between the president and Congress on trade. The stakes for future policy and presidential authority were enormous. With tariffs in legal limbo, the future of U.S. trade policy is uncertain. The appeals process could take months, possibly ending at the Supreme Court. The final ruling will set a precedent for presidential power over trade. Meanwhile, U.S. diplomats are locked in tense negotiations with China, India, and the U.K. to avoid further tariff escalations. Markets remain volatile, reacting to every legal and diplomatic twist. Businesses are paralyzed, unable to plan amid the uncertainty. Political fallout is growing as public support for tariffs wanes and economic pain spreads. The administration faces new legal challenges, including efforts to end tariff exemptions for small-value imports. The trade war's outcome will shape the economy and the next election. The only certainty: more turbulence lies ahead. The world is watching for the next move. Liberation Day triggered a wave of economic and political disruption. The initial shock upended markets and raised prices, while rapid policy reversals exposed the risks of untangling global supply chains. The legal battle over presidential authority could reshape U.S. trade policy for generations. Ongoing negotiations with China and India will determine if tensions ease or escalate. Liberation Day is now a case study in the limits of unilateral action, even for a superpower. The coming months will reveal if this gamble revitalizes American industry or leads to lasting instability. For now, the aftershocks continue to ripple through business, politics, and the global economy. The story of Liberation Day is far from over.